I'm going to ask staff to brief House Bill 1929 and 1919 together because they're very similar. And if Representative Mossberger could take a seat at the table. So thanks very much.
House Bill 1919 and House Bill 1929 concern animal-related offenses. A person commits animal cruelty if he or she causes injury or suffering to an animal or kills an animal through specified conduct. A person is guilty of animal cruelty in the second degree, which is a gross misdemeanor, when he or she knowingly, recklessly, or with criminal negligence inflicts unnecessary suffering or pain upon an animal. Additionally, an owner may commit this crime by failing to provide necessary shelter, rest, sanitation, space, or medical attention, resulting in unnecessary or unjustifiable pain to the animal, or by abandoning the animal. Participating in animal fighting is a separate criminal offense and is a Class C felony. The crime of animal fighting encompasses various prohibited activities, including knowingly owning, possessing, transferring, or training an animal with the intent that it be engaged in a fighting exhibition, participating in an animal fighting exhibition, for example, through organizing, watching, or wagering bets, keeping or using any place for animal fighting, or taking, leading away, possessing, transferring, or receiving an animal, intending for it to be used for fighting or for training or baiting for the purpose of fighting. In 2016, the FBI started tracking animal offenses in its National Incident-Based Reporting System, which is an incident-based crime tracking system based on data submitted by law enforcement agencies. With respect to animal offenses, the FBI is currently tracking incidents of gross neglect, torture, organized abuse, and sexual abuse. Under House Bill 1919, in addition to existing grounds, a person commits the crime of animal fighting if he or she knowingly steals an animal with the intent of using the animal for animal fighting or for training or baiting for the purpose of animal fighting, or if he or she owns, possesses, buys, sells, transfers, or manufactures animal fighting paraphernalia for the purpose of engaging in, promoting, or facilitating animal fighting, or for baiting a live animal for the purpose of animal fighting. Animal fighting paraphernalia is defined and includes equipment, products, implements, or materials of any kind that are used, intended for use, or designed for use in training, preparation, conditioning, or furtherance of animal fighting, and examples of animal fighting paraphernalia are provided in the bill. Additionally, the classification of animal fighting is elevated from a Class C felony to a Class B felony when the person mutilates an animal in furtherance of the animal fighting offense. Additionally, the crime of animal cruelty in the second degree is expanded to include circumstances in which a person has taken control, custody, or possession of an animal that was involved in animal fighting and subsequently abandons the animal, causing the animal bodily harm or putting the animal at risk of bodily harm. The bill also requires the Washington State Patrol to establish and maintain a statewide toll-free voicemail line to allow members of the public to anonymously report incidents of animal abuse. The State Patrol must regularly review the messages received and, as appropriate, refer incidents to local law enforcement agencies for investigation. And the State Patrol must also create a central repository for local law enforcement agencies to report incidents of animal abuse, animal neglect, animal fighting, and animal sexual abuse for submission to the FBI for its National Incident-Based Reporting System. And just briefly, House Bill 1929 contains the same provision as is contained in House Bill 1919 that adds owning, possessing, transferring, or manufacturing animal fighting paraphernalia to the grounds for committing an animal fighting offense, but does not contain any of the other provisions of House Bill 1919.
Thank you. Does the paraphernalia, is it exactly the same wording in 1919 and 1929?
It is.
Exactly the same. Okay. Just want to make sure there's an intent element that merely possessing the animal fighting paraphernalia, we don't want to make it a strict liability. You have to prove that they're going to use it for animal fighting. So do members have questions of staff? Chair recognizes Representative Clippard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mayor, if you don't know the answer, you don't have to. I can wait for public or other testimony, but I'm reading through the definition of paraphernalia, and it has treadmills. Is that just like a human treadmill for exercise?
Well, it would have to be an item that's used, intended for use, or designed for use for animal fighting. So, so perhaps it could be, but there would have to be other evidence that it was being used in some way for animal fighting.
Okay, thank you.
The mere possession of a treadmill wouldn't be a crime here. All of our basements, there'd be raids. So, yeah. The gentlelady from the 14th, please tell us what's going on in Yakima County.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member Clippard, for hearing this bill. I'm very appreciative. For the record, State Representative Gina Mossberger. So what's going on in Yakima and in other places across the state is the dogfighting, which we knew unfortunately was probably happening. But we have an epidemic in Yakima and surrounding areas where many dogs are being stolen out of yards where someone will take their dog out and then it will disappear. So there's large numbers of dogs missing from neighborhoods. And so amongst further research by law enforcement, we found that they were being collected to be bait, and they were captured, and then their mouths were duct taped, and then they were sliced and put in rings repeatedly. So we went to the statutes, the rules, and said, how could this happen? And they're making very, very large amounts of money on this act, which is very popular, unfortunately. If you can imagine being law enforcement coming in to break that up, if you were able to find it eventually, it would be very dangerous. Usually there's drug abuse and other issues, and it puts our officers in safety. So we're trying to figure out what can we do to make sure that we pay attention to the fact that this is happening and try to stop it. I had a constituent last week that called and said there were 3 dogs in the ditch when she went home, and all 3 had their mouths duct taped, and they were deceased and sliced on the side. So it's like a mark, a certain way they're doing it. Again, we're trying to strengthen the laws of anyone that intentionally mutilates an animal. The types of paraphernalia, we were asked by the Humane Society to make sure that we had backup, to make sure that either one of Representative Lovick's and I bills passed to make sure we move this forward. So we were asked to put that language in ours just in case one didn't go through. And we're happy to support whatever helps you the most to make sure this stops. The paraphernalia piece, there's pieces in there that are listed which absolutely you wouldn't use in pet care. The bite sticks, things like that. The treadmill, there are treadmills for dogs to help them lose weight, small ones, I've seen them. But these ones, you'd have to find it in an area used of rings where they're training dogs to go back in and fight. So we're not talking about human treadmills, but that's a great question. Thank you for asking that question. We want to make it a crime to abandon the dogs. I hope to put that sentencing pretty high, but the reality is that it's probably the younger members of maybe a want-to-be gang, and we're saying you have to have the job of disposing and abandoning these dogs. So we're trying to make that not as severe as I would like to, just so that we can hopefully stop that behavior and not, destroy someone's life who was trying to be accepted into a gang or was threatened to not do that job. 71% of the victims of domestic violence in the state of Washington have reported that a lot of this is starting with dogs.
Yeah.
We see the FBI, the cruelty to animals is one of the most common traits of rapists and murderers. And so we're doing everything we can. Dogs can't speak, as you know. And so we need to be their voices for these horrific acts. And, only a coward or a bully would do these acts of an innocent animal. And so I'm asking for your help. So I asked for a yes vote on the bill.
Thank you very much for bringing this forward. I guess razor blades for the use on the legs of roosters to fight each other, that would be included.
Mm-hmm. So that is included in there.
Yeah. Representative Lovick has a bill that includes this paraphernalia provision. I don't know. I'm not necessarily putting Representative Lovick on the spot, but I don't know if he wanted to make a comment from the podium or not.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I would say is that, and as some of the research that we have done shows that 23 other states has this law in place as far as possession of fighting paraphernalia. And I'm encouraged that we're doing something about it. We have some strong laws in our state, but I think that this is something that we should do. That's all I would have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Do members have any questions? We're going to get testimony on this, and thank you very much. We have a short time window to get this bill out, so please keep in touch with us about amendments and so forth.
I will do that.
We'll have one of our members probably sponsor a substitute. There are a couple. I know the Class B felony, for instance, we've gotten some feedback that that's a little bit out of proportion to other crimes that are of similar nature, so that might be amended.
I understand.
We'll see what else there is. So
I think anything to improve and stop this would help us and give law enforcement some strength once they do and brave enough to go into these bad situations.
Yeah.
So
great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Again, we'll keep the hearing open on House Bill 1919, and then